Story 1. Please say which country this is. For me, the Calcuttas, the stone-paved walkways are very slippery, especially when it rains. Did you guess Portugal? Story 2. Sunburn. Even if visitors are aware of it, most people underestimate it. Story 3. Crossing bicycle paths and interacting with cyclists as a pedestrian in Amsterdam. Story 4. Norway's natural areas have few safety barriers. We keep them as natural as possible. You are free to approach the edges of cliffs, but visitors die each year. This is Norway. Story 5. In the Midwest of the United States, watch for deer while driving. They are especially common from October through November. Story 6. In parts of the United States of America, especially Central Texas, there are roads with low water crossings where, after heavy rains, attempting to drive through often leads to cars being washed away and to fatalities. Signs advise turn around, don't drown. But some crossings are not well marked and can be hazardous to those unfamiliar with the area. If you arrive before police close the road and it is nighttime, driving through is an easy way to be swept away. This is a serious risk for visitors from other states and for international visitors who may not anticipate it. Story 7. Riptides. We have beautiful beaches that attract visitors from countries without oceans. They see a calm patch of water and go there to avoid the waves. Little do they know that is the dangerous part. Story 8. Getting hit by a bicycle because they walk on bike lanes. Story 9. In the United Kingdom, we might be rude to you without you even noticing. Story 10. Getting lost while hiking, also called tramping. Climbing mountains without being prepared for the weather. Story 11. How to interact with police in the United States. Do not try to bribe them, even if you are from a country where that is common. Follow their lawful instructions. If an officer is rude or abusive, comply and later file a complaint or pursue a lawsuit. If you are stopped while driving, pull over safely, remain seated, and do not make sudden movements. I was taking a theater class in the United Kingdom, and the instructor was talking about nonverbal communication, status, positioning, and so on. He said that when he is pulled over, he exits the car to equalize the situation with the officer. Students from the United States responded that stepping out of the car can be dangerous in the United States. Story 12. Unexpected natural disasters such as earthquakes or wildfires can catch people off guard. Story 13. Do not approach that elk as if you are a Disney princess. Stay far away from that 2,000-pound bison. The selfie is not worth it. Nature will injure you without hesitation. Also, we are polite maybe but not necessarily nice. Story 14. A 200-franc fine for not knowing you need to scan the shopping bag at the self-checkout. Story 15. In Poland, be careful while walking. Someone might actually smile at you. It is very rare but possible. Story 16. New Zealand has no dangerous animals. Go for a summer mountain hike and die of hypothermia in a snowstorm. Story 17. In Australia, if you keep shoes outside and do not check them for spiders, be careful. I have always left shoes outside since I was a child and never thought anything of it. I freaked out when an American friend who lives here grabbed a pair of gumboots from his veranda and slipped them on without checking. He was adamant that because we lived in Sydney, it would not be a problem. Sydney, the city, is known for having some of the worst funnel web spiders, so always check footwear before putting it on. Story 18. I am a Central Texan. The summer heat can be deadly, and we are not the hottest area in the country. Story 19. The reindeer will lie down to nap on the road, and you will have to go around them. Also, there are polar lions. Story 20. When you are driving a car in Germany, you must have a destination. If the police stop you and you tell them you are just driving around for fun, you will receive a fine. Story 21. Sudden political unrest or protests can unexpectedly disrupt daily life. Story 22. In Australia, spiders and snakes are no problem most of the time, but every Australian fears the magpie. Story 23. About 75% of all tornadoes on Earth occur in the United States, and many people outside the United States do not realize how dangerous they are. For example, people in the United Kingdom often ask why houses in tornado-prone areas are built of wood rather than brick. Brick houses would be almost as easily torn apart by a tornado and would be more expensive to rebuild. The depictions in films such as Twister and The Wizard of Oz are not exaggerations of the destructive power of tornadoes. They do not only strike rural areas, they can cause enormous damage in large cities as well. Story 24. Jumping from a hotel balcony into a swimming pool is dangerous. Every year, many teenagers and young adults die this way. Sadly, the first tourist fatality often marks the start of the summer season. Story 25. Wind chill. There may be frostbite warnings and it may be minus 40 degrees, but you could walk outside and think it is not really that cold. Then you walk and the wind hits you, and you realize how cold it is. Your joints freeze and you cannot bend or move your fingers or toes, and any exposed skin that is not properly covered can develop frostbite very quickly. Story 26. We have bears, eagles, wolves, and wolverines. But the animal you should fear most is the moose. If you see a moose in the wild, it is not a small horse with antlers that you can pet and feed by hand. It is a potential killer, a 700 kilograms beast. Story 27. The realization that real life is not an anime and the disillusionment that follows. Story 28. United States wildlife can be dangerous. Many tourists are seriously injured or killed because they walk up to bison in Yellowstone or to other large animals such as moose and deer. People see herbivores and assume they are friendly. Remember that these animals live alongside predators like mountain lions, bears, wolves, and alligators, and surviving in that environment does not come from being gentle. People from the United Kingdom often say they would be terrified of mountain lions and bears, but those predators are more likely to leave you alone because an unnecessary fight could kill them. It is better to avoid a fight and live another day. Herbivores do not have that luxury. They must fight threats or die. Story 29. Canada distances. No, you cannot do a day trip by car from Toronto to Winnipeg. Story 30. Driving in a snowstorm is dangerous. If local media warn you to stay off the roads, do not drive. You can become stuck and freeze to death even on a highway. This happens fairly often. A friend of my brother died that way. This occurred in New York State, but I am sure it is the same in many other parts of the United States and Canada. If local residents tell you something is too dangerous, listen to them. Story 31. I read a mainstream article claiming many Europeans love to visit deserts in the United States, believing it is just a short, easy walk to take photos, and then they end up dying from lack of water. I am not sure whether this is true. Story 32. I am British. People joke that we cannot handle hot weather, but heat stroke is a real risk here. Because our climate is usually cooler, houses are built to retain heat and air conditioning is uncommon. That means in summer homes can become unbearably hot, and some people, particularly the elderly, may develop heat stroke. Story 33. In Norway, not being adequately prepared for winter is a common issue. Layers and wool are key. You need winter boots and a very warm coat. Be prepared for temperatures as low as minus 20 degrees Celsius. It may be a blessing that this is the biggest concern. Laugh out loud. Story 34. Here in the United States, rabies is present. If you see a raccoon or any other animal stumbling in circles and foaming at the mouth, get away as soon as possible. If it bites you, which it will try its hardest to do once it realizes you are there, you have 72 hours to get immunoglobulin injections into the bite wounds or the virus will kill you. New York State has had a rabies epidemic for some time, and New York City tourists who take the train up to the Hudson Valley for hiking may not be aware of this. Carry a knife on your hikes. A good friend of mine was brutally attacked by a raccoon and had to use brute strength to rip it off her, fling it to the ground, and run away while carrying her dog. I carry a knife everywhere now. The people you meet on a hike are generally friendly. The animals may be rabid and dangerous. Story 35. Everyone fears snakes, spiders, crocodiles, and so on, but other hazards you might not expect are more dangerous in Australia. Australia receives more sun exposure on average than most countries, contributing to some of the highest skin cancer rates in the world. Many people become lost in bushland larger than a few acres. They can wander in circles and risk dying from dehydration. Rip currents at many beaches can catch you off guard if you are not aware of them. Story 36. Canada. If you are out camping or sightseeing, keep to the viewpoints and trails. We have a continent of untamed wilderness. If you get lost, you could wander for years without ever seeing another person or any sign of civilization. Story 37. In Australia, drop bears are treated as a joke, but hundreds die every year despite warnings. Story 38. When hiking, minefields are not always well fenced or labeled. Story 39. From the Scottish Highlands. The number of people who go into the mountains completely unprepared, or who ignore explicit weather warnings from mountain rescue and other authorities, is alarming. Many people have gone missing, been found dead, or remain unaccounted for. The highlands are vast, with difficult terrain and frequently poor weather. Too often people waste mountain rescue or Coast Guard resources through reckless behavior. My mother hiked Ben Nevis fully prepared. Ben Nevis is the highest mountain in the United Kingdom. On that walk, a woman who was 8 months pregnant was hiking, which could have become a medical emergency at altitude, and others were wearing flip-flops with no water for an all-day hike. Do not underestimate mountaineering. Story 40. Wearing a specific combination of white and red and speaking the country's national language. Story 41. In South Africa, everyone hears the horror stories and is braced for crime. Many assume humans are the only criminals, but animals can be aggressive. A baboon may mug you. A whole troop of vervet monkeys may burglarize you. In general, many people go from admiring wildlife to fearing it. Story 42. The biggest risk isn't the wildlife or natural disasters. It's accidentally ordering a dish that's spicier than your ex's texts. One bite and you'll question all your life choices. Story 43. Sweden has poisonous mushrooms. You need a mushroom guide if you go foraging. Story 44. Emus often appear when you stop on a nature trail to eat. They can be aggressive when food is involved. The Australian magpie can be aggressive during mating season. They are called magpies, but the only thing they have in common with Northern Hemisphere magpies is color. During mating season, they become very protective of their nests and eggs. You may be walking along a path when you hear loud beating of wings above and behind you. The bird will continue to attack until you leave its territory. They do not just make frightening noises. They will hit and claw you. Many cyclists wear special helmets with spikes to protect themselves. It is unclear how effective these helmets are. Story 45. In the United States, driving too slowly on freeways can be dangerous. Many European visitors come from countries where drivers typically travel at or below the posted speed limit. In the United States, freeway traffic often moves 10 to 15 miles per hour above the posted limit, so driving 10 to 15 miles per hour slower than the flow can create hazardous situations, especially when merging onto the freeway or when you are in any lane other than the right-hand lane. Story 46. A car breaking down and becoming stranded in -30 degrees Celsius without clothing or supplies. Falling through ice into water and being pulled under by the undercurrent. Digging a cave in a pile of snow and having it collapse on top of you. When there is a lot of snow, the snow forms an empty funnel shape under trees known as a tree well. When downhill skiing, if you fall into such a funnel and hit a tree so that snow falls from the branches and fills the funnel, it can be almost impossible to get out without help. Snowmobiles can reach speeds of up to 200 kilometers per hour. They are extremely dangerous if you do not know what you are doing. One risk visitors do not always understand is the steel guy wires that hold up antennas and radio masts and so on. They can be hard to detect in Arctic. Low light conditions and colliding with one can be fatal. Another risk visitors may not know about is ice fishing holes where the drilled out ice can refreeze into a solid bump. Hitting one at high speed can tip your snowmobile. That is why you should stay on marked trails. Highly poisonous mushrooms, such as the destroying angel, grow in the Nordic countries. Ingesting even a small amount can be deadly. Story 47. You will fall in love with Ireland's scenery, the friendly conversations around a pint or two in a bar, and the generally relaxed people. Once you visit to cross it off your bucket list, you will want to return. Some visitors decide to make Ireland their home. Story 48. I am from Italy, and there are a few risks that, while rare, should be remembered depending on where someone goes. Earthquakes. They are more frequent here than in many other countries. Everyone coming to Italy should at least read a pamphlet explaining proper behavior during an earthquake. Floods and storms. Some parts of Italy have been badly affected by floods in recent years. One should be aware and know basic safety precautions. Heatstroke. Southern Italy can be very hot and dry with strong winds, a combination that can lead to heat stroke while you might think you are getting a cold. Story 49. Delhi Belly. You would think you are safe if you only stay and eat at the Hilton, but you are not. Story 50. In the Scottish Highlands, the weather on the hills can change terrifyingly quickly from quite pleasant to dangerously cold. A wall of low cloud can roll in within a few minutes, and many people have fallen to their deaths after losing the path. The volunteer Scottish mountain rescue teams helped more than 600 people last year, and the vast majority of callouts occurred in the summer months. 21 people died. People often set out on what they perceive as a gentle walk along a hillside path and can very quickly find themselves underdressed and unprepared to leave the hills safely. Story 51. Not all foreigners are the same, but I do not think people from some countries, such as the United Kingdom, are prepared for how aggressively and dangerously drivers in Belgium behave toward other road users, especially pedestrians. Story 52. Public transit is based on trust. There are no turnstiles before entering a train, tram, bus, or ship. There is no one at the entrance to check your ticket, and you just get on. There are sporadic checks, and the fines are hefty. This has been a problem for me when I travel abroad. I sometimes board a bus without showing a ticket and get reprimanded by an angry driver. Story 53. If you are in Colorado, United States, many drivers of Dodge Ram trucks have a high rate of driving under the influence. Story 54. Quicksand. Just kidding, but when I was a kid watching Western movies. Story 55. The desert in Arizona requires carrying and drinking a large amount of water when hiking. There are rattlesnakes, and you may get a severe sunburn. Weather services post ultraviolet index reports daily. The heat is a dry heat. Sweat evaporates so quickly that you do not really cool off, and you can lose track of insensible water losses. When I moved from the east coast of the United States to Arizona, I developed such severe headaches for the first couple of weeks that I was convinced I had a brain tumor. My elderly neighbor told me I was just dehydrated. You can fry an egg on the sidewalk, and during monsoon season you can be swept away and drown in a flash flood or be struck by lightning in some of the worst thunderstorms. Story 56. Lyme disease is common, especially in New England. Do not walk through tall grass without wearing long socks. Story 57. Moose on the road are extremely dangerous. People who compare moose to deer do not understand how much worse a moose collision can be. Moose eyes do not reflect light. They are dark-colored, do not scatter like deer, and are tall with spindly legs. If you hit a moose with a car, the legs can be forced under the vehicle and over 400 kilograms of moose can come through the windshield onto the occupants. Story 58. Vanishing. Close to 100,000 missing person reports every year. Story 59. Canada. Insect-borne diseases such as Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses, and West Nile virus transmitted by mosquitoes. Extreme cold causes numerous deaths from exposure each year. It can be really cold and dangerous. The so-called cobra chickens are no joke. One of them bit my grandmother and broke her finger. Story 60. American. Getting stuck on a long drive and having to use the bathroom. I think visitors from other countries might underestimate how long it takes to drive from city to city, since their own cities may be more densely clustered. It is more of an annoyance than something serious, but it is a risk nonetheless. Story 61. Frostbite and hypothermia can occur in winter. Do not rely on southern outerwear when in northern Canada. Story 62. Hitting a moose on the road is extremely dangerous at high speeds, and the animal can be difficult to see in the dark. Story 63. Most people vastly underestimate driving. It is the leading cause of death for people in the United States under 50. Story 64. Canada is very large, so hazards vary by region. I live on Vancouver Island. 1. Getting lost in the woods happens often. Even on short-day hikes near the city, unprepared people can get lost. 2. Vancouver Island has one of the highest concentrations of cougars in the world. They sometimes enter the city of Victoria, threatening pets and causing occasional school lockdowns. Story 65. Western Canada. Bears. If you see a bear on the side of the highway while driving through the Rockies, do not pull over to take pictures. It stresses them and they can kill you. Just because you are standing next to your car does not mean you are safe. They can accelerate from a standstill to a full-on sprint far faster than you can react. Story 66. You may face extremely expensive medical bills if you suddenly fall ill. Story 67. Xenophobia. There is no theft or burglary, and my country is safe as long as you are a citizen and know the language, but it is too risky for any foreigner. Story 68. When changing lanes on the freeway, you check that the lane is clear. While you are about to move, a car can whoosh up that you might not notice unless you are watching for it. That is because they were traveling at 90 miles per hour while you were traveling at 55 miles per hour, so you could not have seen them. Usually they are driving a pickup truck in Texas. Story 69. Being struck by a car or a motorcycle while walking on a sidewalk. Story 70. Getting lost in the Wattenmeer and not making it to shore before the tide comes in. Story 71. Dangerous animals include dingoes, saltwater crocodiles, jellyfish, and funnel web spiders. Story 72. I am American. I guess I underestimated how big the United States is. I have heard of English tourists getting a rude awakening when they planned on touring through New York City and Texas on the same day. Story 73. Deer frequently jump in front of traffic and can cause significant damage. Story 74. Most people assume wild animals in Finland, but they generally avoid people. More common causes of accidental death include getting lost in the wilderness or forests, especially if unprepared or unfamiliar with the area. Winter hazards can be deadly, including hypothermia, icy roads and car accidents, and thin ice over bodies of water. Other risks include being intoxicated near water and, less commonly known, crashing a car into a moose. Story 75. People get lost and do not realize that animals here can be dangerous. As an American who has visited many national parks, I find it striking to watch park rangers become alarmed when foreign tourists, especially Europeans, do not understand that leaving the trail can leave them dozens of miles off course from the nearest town. I did not understand why until I spoke with a German man on another subreddit. I asked how many towns were within a 5-mile radius of him. He lived in a rural area, so I assumed there would be 1 or 2. He said 22. I live in a densely populated state, but in a rural area. My nearest library is 5 miles away. Story 76. Being a woman and developing appendicitis or any other acute illness that would be covered by a civilized medical system. Story 77. I am Canadian and used to travel to Germany frequently. I often traveled with a German man whose bucket list included being dropped into the Canadian wilderness to camp for a few weeks. To put things in perspective, there is no real wilderness in Germany, only small managed forests. In contrast, I am not very adventurous, but I have often been in places where, if I got lost, they would never find my body. Real wilderness is extremely dangerous, and Canada has a lot of it. Story 78. In the United States, cars versus pedestrians is a real danger. Unless you are in a major city such as New York, Chicago, or Los Angeles, pedestrians may legally have the right of way, but drivers often do not care, do not pay attention, and are not used to looking for people stepping into the road. Even in major cities, you must remain vigilant. Outside those cities, drivers are not expecting pedestrians and you can be struck, even in a designated crosswalk. Story 79. I have seen Chinese and South Asian tourists in Alberta, Canada get out of their cars to try to take pictures of grizzly bears with cubs at the side of the road. That is incredibly stupid. Story 80. Canada has far more wildlife than people realize. I have lived here my whole life and did not notice until my Vietnamese girlfriend pointed it out. We have raccoons, skunks, and possums that hang out in trash cans at night. I do a raccoon roar when taking the trash out to scare them off. We have large, dinosaur-like birds the size of a small child that are extremely territorial, use pack tactics when defending, and will get in your face and act aggressively. We have deer and even coyotes that sometimes show up in cities. We also have moose and bears, both of which I would rather avoid, though not where I live. Story 81. In the United Kingdom, I would say crossing the road is the main hazard. You can cross almost anywhere, and vehicles drive on the opposite side of the road from most countries. If you grow up here or have lived here a long time, you are taught as a child to cross safely, so it becomes second nature. Understandably, tourists sometimes nearly get hit by cars or are actually hit, even at crossings, because they look the wrong way. Story 82. United States of America. You are running out of gas because you did not fill up at the last town. If you see the sign, you should fill your tank. Story 83. We share the longest border with Russia, which is a bit scarier after the United States elections than before. Story 84. Loneliness. Every foreigner assumes we are being dramatic or that they will not be affected. Story 85. States in the United States have very different laws. Recently, many states have concealed carry laws that make it very easy for people to carry guns. Some states do not even require training. Story 86. If you are driving slowly on the German Autobahn, move to the right lane. The left lane is for overtaking, and especially where there are few or no speed limits, it can be extremely dangerous. I have seen many drivers unfamiliar with the roads create hazardous situations. Story 87. Wildlife in Canada. If you are not in a city such as Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver, you are likely to see coyotes, bears, and other animals visiting occasionally. Story 88. Moose crossing the road. If you drive into one, let alone ride into one, you will be killed. Story 89. In winter, the lake freezes over and looks like a large snow-covered field. But there is water under the ice and you could fall in if you walk on it. There are often footsteps and paths on the ice because the lake is next to a popular exercise trail that circles it, but those tracks were made during the coldest part of winter. Near spring, the ice thins and you could fall through while following what looks like a normal snowy path or shortcut. Even when the lake ice is thick enough to support walkers, walking on a river is dangerous. The ice is much thinner and you can fall through and be swept away by the current. Story 90. Cows can become aggressive when you get too close to their offspring while hiking in the mountains. Story 91. People are being bitten or eaten by crocodiles. Many crocodiles are crowding popular tourist spots. This year, they have eaten several dogs. Story 92. People in Europe, especially, do not always realize they live where nature is relatively tame. Our wild animals can be dangerous. The weather is varied, and even temperate areas experience different conditions throughout the year. Unlike people elsewhere, we do not have the population density that lets you walk a mile in any direction and immediately find help if you become lost. Story 93. Canada has one of the largest reserves of soft water in the world. When superpowers start to really want it, we'll have a real fucking problem. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.